Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Friday, Yom Shishi. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house? Melissa in Great Andalusia, Minnesota. Gordo in Scotland. Belle in Texas. and Helke in Germany. Welcome. Heike. Welcome, Heike. That's a new name. Bum, 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 bum. And Franco in Trieste, Lester in Florida, Chaim in Florida, and Aoife in Florida. Welcome, everybody. And Karen in Northern California. Double daf, so we'll get to it. Pages 56 and 57 here in Tractate Zevachim, the 29th volume of the Talmud. We're actually almost at the very bottom of page 56a. We got a good head start yesterday. And with God's help, today we'll finish chapter 5. Reminder, we will have class tomorrow, normal when Shabbos ends here in LA. Now it's much earlier that the time has changed. And then I'm hopping on a red eye to New York. I'm going to attend, with God's help, the Kinnis HaShluchim, the gathering of the Chabad rabbis from around the world. Wonderful, massive event. Excited about that. Hop on a late flight back to LA Sunday night. So we'll miss Sunday only, God willing, and then be back on Monday. So just tomorrow as normal, Sunday off. Okay, bottom of page 56a, continuing the discussion of the actual requirements, how these offerings are brought. We're talking now about Mishna number 6. Yeah, Mishna number 6, which is peace offerings, which are an offering of lesser sanctity, and that means they can be slaughtered anywhere in the courtyard and then eaten by their owners, the parts that are eaten anywhere within Jerusalem. Okay, continuing that discussion, Rav Yitzchak bar Abdumi says, from where is it derived that the blood of offerings becomes disqualified at sunset and can no longer be presented on the altar? And this is as it is stated, right? So where they slaughter, and then it's the blood being sprinkled on the altar. That's what really affects either the atonement or fulfillment of an obligation. But offerings are only brought during the daytime, and the blood has to be sprinkled that day. You can't wait with that until after sunset. There's a sneeze coming. There it is. Thank you. Okay, so from where is it derived that the blood of offerings becomes disqualified at sunset and can no longer be presented on the altar? This is as it is stated in the verse, but if the sacrifice of his offering be a vow or a gift offering, it shall be eaten on the day that he sacrifices his offering, zivcho, his offering, and on the morrow. And this means that on the day that you slaughter, zoveach, the offering, that you sacrifice it on the altar and present its blood. But on the day that you do not slaughter the offering, you may not sacrifice it and present its blood. So the Gemara challenges this derivation that if you're going to use that verse to prove that the blood has to be there by sunset, because of the day you offering, that's when you're doing it. Excuse me. There's a problem, says the Gemara. But the Tana requires this verse for the matter itself to teach that a peace offering may be eaten for only 2 days, right? A peace offering can be eaten that day, that night, and all the next day. You can no longer eat it after sunset on the second day in terms of eating the meat of the offering. And isn't that what that verse just came to teach us? Well, the Gemara answers, if so, let the verse state, on the day he slaughters it, shall it be eaten, and on the following day. Why do I need the verse to add the term that he sacrifices it? Conclude from the wording of the verse that on the day that you slaughter the offering, you sacrifice. That on the day that you, I'm sorry, let me read that again. Conclude from the wording of the verse that on the day that you slaughter the offering, you sacrifice the blood on the altar. But on a day that you do not slaughter the offering, you do not sacrifice the blood on the altar. Now, the Gemara questions this proof, but perhaps this is what the merciful one is saying. If the blood is sacrificed today, i.e. the day that the offering was slaughtered, then the meat may be eaten today and tomorrow. But if the blood is sacrificed tomorrow, then the meat may be eaten tomorrow and the following day. Right? That's not the law, but you might have thought that. Right? So the Gemara answers, if so, let the verse state, on the day it is sacrificed, it shall be eaten, and the following day. Why do I need the verse to state that he sacrifices his offering? Conclude from this very precise wording of the verse that on the day that you slaughter the offering, you sacrifice the blood on the altar, but on a day that you do not slaughter the offering, you do not sacrifice the blood on the altar. New topic. It was stated with regard to one who slaughters a peace offering and intends to eat it on the evening preceding the third day. Well, that's problematic. We can eat the meat of a peace offering of lesser sanctity, right? So there's a longer deadline than, for example, priests eating the meat of a sin offering. They have to eat it either today or tonight, the day on the offering is brought. Peace offering, it may be eaten today, it may be eaten when the offering is brought, that night after the day when the offering is brought, and all the next day. But the second night, right, the next day when it becomes night, the deadline has passed. No more eating the meat. So, it was stated with regard to one who slaughters a peace offering, and he intends at the time of slaughter, right? So the bells are going off. This is a pigul problem. With regard to one who slaughters a peace offering and intends to eat it on the evening preceding the third day, meaning beyond the second day, Chizkiah says the offering is valid, and it is not actually disqualified due to his intention to eat it after its designated time, which should be pigul. Why isn't it pigul? And Rabbi Yochanan says it is disqualified, meaning it is pigul. So the Gemara explains, Chizkiah says that the offering is valid because on the evening preceding the third day, the peace offering has not yet been removed from its previous status and designated for burning. You're not allowed to eat it in that period, but you're not yet obligated to burn what is left over, right? The parts that you didn't eat it and then you're not allowed to eat it, what do you do with it? You burn it. So do you burn it that second night? No, you do not. You burn it on the morning of the third day. So the burning only happens then. Therefore, Chizkiah says if you have this intent to eat it beyond its designated time, but before the time when it would otherwise have to be burned, you're not going to trigger the pigul consequence. A peace offering is not burned until the third morning. As the verse states, it shall be eaten the same day you offer it and on the following day. And if anything remain until the third day, it shall be burned with fire. That's Leviticus 19:6. But Rabbi Yochanan disagrees and says it is disqualified because it has been rejected from being eaten And the law follows Rabbi Yochanan. Now, these two Amoraim have the same dispute concerning a similar matter. With regard to one who eats a peace offering on the evening preceding the third day, Chizkiah says he is exempt from kares because the offering has not yet been removed from its previous status and designated for burning. And Rabbi Yochanan says he is liable to receive kares because it has been rejected from being eaten. Right? Same dispute, basically same result. What's the difference between them? One is whether it gets disqualified because he has the intention to eat it on that second night when it's already beyond its time, and he has that intention at the time of slaughter. That offering is already disqualified, and it's rendered pigul, and then if you do eat it, you'd be subject to kares. The second version of it is it wasn't about intention at the time of slaughter. It was slaughtered properly. The blood was sprinkled, etc. But then they didn't get around to eating the meat until it was beyond the deadline, and they ate it anyway. We don't call that pigul. We call that nosar. It is taught in a baraisa in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. With regard to sacrificial animals that may be eaten for one day, if one intends to present their blood after sunset, or if one intends to eat their meat or to sacrifice their sacrificial portions after the first rays of dawn, the offering is considered to be pigul and is disqualified. With regard to sacrificial animals that may be eaten for 2 days and one night, if one intends to present their blood after sunset, or if one intends to sacrifice their sacrificial portions after the first rays of dawn, or if one intends to eat their meat after sunset following the second of the 2 days, the offering is considered to be pigul and is disqualified. So note that there are separate deadlines. The deadline for presenting the blood is today, the day that the offering is brought. The deadline for eating the meat is by the end of tonight in the case of a sin offering and the priests are eating it, or by the end of tomorrow daytime in the case of a peace offering. Now, the Gemara cites another baraisa on this topic. The sages taught, one might have thought that peace offerings, which may be eaten for 2 days, may also be eaten on the evening preceding the third day. And this is the conclusion of a logical inference. Other offerings, for example, thanks offerings, are eaten for 1 day, and peace offerings are eaten for 2 days. So just as with regard to offerings that are eaten for 1 day, the night follows the previous day, the offering may be eaten during the day and the subsequent night, so too with regard to peace offerings that are eaten for 2 days, why not say that the night follows the day and rule that they may be eaten on the night after the second day? And to counter this logic, the verse in the Torah states, and when you sacrifice a peace offering to God, you shall sacrifice it of your own will. It shall be eaten the same day you sacrifice it, and on the next day. And if any remains until the third day, it shall be burned with fire. And this teaches that it may be eaten while it is still daytime, i.e. during the second day, but it may not be eaten on the evening during the third day. Because remember that the days in the Hebrew calendar begin in the evening. When it turns sunset, comes nightfall, we are entering a new day. The baraisa continues, if a peace offering may not be eaten beyond the second day, one might have thought that it should be burned immediately after the conclusion of the second day, right? Burn it that second night. And this too would be the conclusion of a logical inference. Other offerings are eaten for 1 day, and peace offerings are eaten for 2 days. Just as with regard to offerings that are eaten for 1 day, immediately after the conclusion of their permitted time for eating, should their burning commence, right? They're good for 1 day. That means you can eat it today and tonight. And then when we hit the next morning, that's when the burning happens. So if we're saying that for the peace offering, it can be eaten today, tonight, all day tomorrow, and then the time of eating it ends, so then the time of burning should begin right after the time of eating is over. That would be at night, right? The second night. That would be the logical inference. And to counter this logic, the verse states, and if any remains of the flesh of the sacrifice on the third day, it shall be burned with fire, meaning you must burn it during the day, but you may not burn it during the night. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 6. Moving on to Mishnah 7, which is the last Mishnah of the chapter. Mishnah 7. The bechor the firstborn offering, right? This is when a domesticated animal, basically owned by somebody who owns animals, owns livestock, produces a male offspring as its firstborn. That's a bechor, and when the temple is standing in Jerusalem, that animal is sacrificed, and its meat will go to the priests. We're also going to talk about the animal tithe. So people who have large flocks, 3 times a year, they would gather in all the newly born, sheep and goats, and they would pass them under the rod. Right? They would count all these animals, and every 10th animal would get a mark on it, and that's the animal tithe. The animal tithe has to be taken up to Jerusalem, and then there it is sacrificed and his blood is sprinkled, but that meat is eaten by the owner anywhere in Jerusalem. So it's a lot like Meiser Sheni, second tithe produce of people who grow crops. So the firstborn offering, the animal tithe offering, and the Pesach, right? The Passover goat or sheep brought at Passover. Again, all these offerings are only brought when the temple is standing in Jerusalem. Are offerings of lesser sanctity. Their slaughter is anywhere in the temple courtyard, and their blood requires one placement, provided that the priest places it so that the blood goes on the base of the altar. The law differs with regard to their consumption. The firstborn offering is eaten by the priests. The animal tithe offering is eaten by any person, which means a Jew who is tahor, ritually pure. And they are eaten throughout the city of Jerusalem, prepared in any manner of food preparation for 2 days and 1 night. The Paschal offering, is eaten only at night, and it is eaten only until midnight, and it is eaten only by its registrants, the people who agreed to share that particular kid or lamb in its first year. They already pre-arranged that they would be having Passover together, and they were all going to be registered to that particular animal. And so that is called its registrants, i.e. those who registered in advance to partake of the offering. And it is eaten only roasted, right? The Pesach has to be roasted. You can't cook it in a stew. You can't, you can't fry it up. It has to be roasted. It has to be cooked in a special way. And that is Mishnah 7. Now the Gemara. Who is the Tana who taught that the blood of these offerings is placed, not poured, so that it goes on the base of the altar? Rav Chisda says that it is Rabbi Yosei HaGalili, as it is taught in a Baraisa that Rabbi Yosei HaGalili says. The verse states, but the firstborn of an ox, or the firstborn of a sheep, or the firstborn of a goat, you shall not redeem. They are sacred. You shall sprinkle their blood upon the altar, and you shall burn their fat for an offering made by fire, for a pleasing aroma to the Lord. That is Numbers 18:17. It is not stated its fat, but rather their fat. Similarly, it is not stated its blood, but rather their blood. This teaches with regard to a firstborn offering, which is mentioned explicitly in the verse, and an animal tithe offering and a paschal offering, which are similar in their level of sanctity to the bechor, the firstborn offering, that they all require placement of their blood and the burning of their sacrificial portions on the altar. So the Gemara asks, from where do we derive that their blood must be placed so that it goes on the base of the altar? And Rabbi Eliezer says this is derived by way of a verbal analogy, with the meaning of the word sprinkling stated here, derived from the meaning of the word sprinkling stated with regard to a burnt offering. Now we're in 57a. And the Gemara asks, and from where do we derive the law that a burnt offering itself has its blood presented on the altar in a place where there is a base? As we saw, the base was only on 2 sides of the altar, and so in the southeast corner of the altar, there is no base. So the Gemara answers, we derive it from a verse. As it is written, and he shall pour all the blood of the bull at the base of the altar of the burnt offering. That's Leviticus 4:7. And this teaches that the blood of an obligatory burnt offering requires presentation at the base of the altar, as the verse specifically describes the base of the altar as connected to the burnt offering. So the Gemara asks, if it is derived from a burnt offering via a verbal analogy, one might think that just as there, a burnt offering requires 2 placements that are 4, so too here, a firstborn offering, an animal tithe offering, and a paschal offering, the pesach, should also require 2 placements that are 4, and not just a single placement when you're sprinkling the blood on the altar. So why only a single placement for these offerings and not the 2 that are 4 that we have for the burnt offering? So Abaye says, to answer the question, why do I need the Torah to write, quote, and Aaron's sons, the priests, shall present the blood and sprinkle the blood around the altar? I'm going to read that again. And Aaron's sons, the priests, shall present the blood and sprinkle the blood around against the altar. That's Leviticus 1:5. And that is stated with regard to a burnt offering. Why? To teach that the blood must be placed on all 4 sides of the altar. In addition to writing, and Moses took the blood and put it on the corners of the altar around with his finger, with regard to a sin offering. So they are 2 verses that come as one, i.e. they teach the same matter. And whenever you have 2 verses that come as one, they do not teach their common aspect to apply to other cases, right? When 2 things have the same law and it's taught 2 times, the Torah is signaling to you that that law applies only to those 2 cases, and you don't extend it to other cases. Because the law is repeated, where you could have derived it from one to the other, since it's repeated in both places, it's to tell you that those are the only 2 places where that law applies. There are 2 verses that come as one, i.e. they teach the same matter, and any 2 verses that come as one do not teach their common aspect to apply to other cases. Therefore, the bechor and the meiser, the animal tithe offering, and the pesach do not require 2 placements that are 4. They do require having their blood on the altar, so since it's going to be one less level of stringency, that's 1 placement. Now the Gemara asks, this works out well according to the one who says that 2 verses that come as one do not teach their common aspect with regard to other cases, but not everybody holds by that. But according to the one who says that 2 verses that come as one do teach their common aspect with regard to other cases, then what is there to say? And the Gemara answers, together with the verse stated with regard to a guilt offering, there are 3 verses, as it is written, and its blood shall be sprinkled around the altar in Leviticus 7:2. And 3 verses, which come as one, certainly do not teach their common aspect with regard to other cases. Now, new topic, the Mishna teaches the bechor, the firstborn offering, is eaten by the priests throughout the city of Jerusalem, prepared in any manner of food preparation for 2 days and 1 night. And the sages taught in a Baraisa, from where is it derived with regard to a bechor, that it is eaten for 2 days and the intervening night? It is derived from a verse, as it is stated with regard to the bechor, and their flesh shall be yours as the breast of waving and as the right thigh. That's Numbers 18:18, when it says, it shall be yours, speaking to the priests. The verse juxtaposes the bechor with the breast and thigh of peace offerings. So just as peace offerings are eaten for 2 days and 1 night, the intervening night, so too a bechor is eaten for 2 days and 1 night. Now the Baraisa relates, and this question was asked before the sages in the vineyard, i.e. the academy at Yavne, right after the destruction of the Second Temple. The Sanhedrin relocated to Yavne. That's where they kept up the learning, and that's where they began to figure out what Judaism would look like in the absence of a temple, in the absence of the ability to bring the sacrifices, which was, the kind of center of the Jewish world until the Second Temple was destroyed. And they obviously did a great job, because here are Jews and Judaism 2,000 years later. For how many days and nights is a firstborn as a bechor eaten? Rabbi Tarfon responded and said, for 2 days and 1 night. And there was one student there who came to the study hall before the sages for the first time, and his name was Rabbi Yosei HaGalili. Right? So Rabbi Yosei HaGalili, super respected sage with many teachings all over the Talmud. This seems to be his debut as a sage speaking in the Talmud. So he said to Rabbi Tarfon, my teacher, from where do you derive this? And Rabbi Tarfon said to him, my son, peace offerings are offerings of lesser sanctity, and a bechor is an offering of lesser sanctity. So just as peace offerings are eaten for 2 days and 1 night, so too the bechor is eaten for 2 days and 1 night. Rabbi Yosei HaGalili said to him, my teacher, there is a different comparison that can be made. A bechor is given as a gift to the priest, and a sin offering and a guilt offering are each given as a gift to the priest. Well, just as a sin offering and a guilt offering are eaten for 1 day and 1 night, so too a bechor should be eaten for 1 day and 1 night. Rabbi Tarfon said to him, let us judge a matter from a matter to which it is most similar. A bechor is an offering of lesser sanctity, as are peace offerings. And learn a matter from a matter, i.e. there is another comparison to be made. Just as peace offerings do not come as atonement for a sin, so too a bechor does not come as atonement for a sin. And just as peace offerings are eaten for 2 days and 1 night, therefore, so too a bechor is eaten for 2 days and 1 night. But Rabbi Yosei HaGalili was not satisfied. And he said, my teacher, I can answer you in a similar way. Let us judge a matter from a matter to which it is most similar. A bechor is more similar to a sin offering and a guilt offering. And learn a matter from a matter, i.e. there is another comparison to be made. A sin offering and a guilt offering are each given as a gift to a priest, and a bechor is given as a gift to a priest. Just as a sin offering and a guilt offering do not come as a vow offering or as a gift offering, i.e. they are only brought by one who is obligated to bring them, so too a bechor does not come as a vow offering or a gift offering. It is only brought by one who is obligated to bring it, because his female sheep or female goat, its firstborn, was a male offspring. That created a bechor that the owner has to bring as an offering. He's obligated. It's not a voluntary offering. It's not a gift offering. And that's similar to a sin offering and a guilt offering. And just as a sin offering and a guilt offering are eaten for 1 day and 1 night, therefore, according to Rabbi Yosei HaGalili, the bechor should be eaten for 1 day and 1 night and not 2 days and 1 night. At this point, Rabbi Akiva jumped into the discussion and Rabbi Tarfon left. And the note here is that doesn't mean he left the room. He said, well, if Akiva is going to jump in, I'll let Akiva handle this. So now Rabbi Akiva is going to address Rabbi Yosei HaGalili, the very brilliant young student. Rabbi Akiva said to Rabbi Yosei HaGalili, but the verse states, and their flesh shall be yours, as the breast of waving and as the right thigh. Numbers 18:18. So the verse juxtaposes the bechor with a breast and a thigh of peace offerings. And just as peace offerings are eaten for 2 days and 1 night, so too the bechor should be eaten for 2 days and 1 night. Is Rabbi Yosei HaGalili satisfied? No. Rabbi Yosei HaGalili said to Rabbi Akiva, you juxtaposed it with a breast and a thigh of peace offerings. But since the Torah does not specify with which offering the bechor is juxtaposed, I juxtapose it with a breast and a thigh of a thanks offering, which are also given to a priest. And just as a thanks offering is eaten for 1 day and 1 night, so too a bechor should only be eaten for 1 day and 1 night. Rabbi Akiva said to Rabbi Yosei HaGalili, I concede that it is possible to juxtapose a bechor with a thanks offering. But the verse states, and their flesh shall be yours. As the breast of waving and as the right thigh, it shall be yours. And since there is no need for the verse to state a second time, it shall be yours, what is the meaning when the verse states a second time, it shall be yours? The verse adds another day on which it is permitted for a bechor to be eaten, i.e., a second day. Sounds like Rabbi Yosef Galili was satisfied. The Gemara relates, and when these matters were said before Rabbi Yishmael, he said to his students, "Go out and tell Rabbi Akiva, you were mistaken when you conceded to Rabbi Yosef HaGalili that the allotted time for eating a bechor could have been derived from the allotted time for eating a thanks offering. No, it could not. And the reason? From where is it derived that the breast and the thigh of a thanks offering are eaten by priests? It is derived from a juxtaposition with a peace offering. Nowhere is it stated explicitly that the breast and thigh of a thanks offering are eaten only by priests. And in the realm of consecrated matters, can a matter derived via a juxtaposition teach its law via another juxtaposition? We have learned multiple times that no, it cannot. The Gemara demonstrated that it cannot on page 49b. Consequently, you should not infer from the latter formulation of the verse, from the words, it shall be yours, but rather, says Rabbi Yishmael to Rabbi Akiva, but rather from the first formulation of the verse, as you claim that the Torah juxtaposes a firstborn offering with the breast and thigh of a peace offering. So the Gemara asks, and what does Rabbi Yishmael do with this extra phrase, it shall be yours? This teaches about a blemished bechor, that it is also given as a gift to the priest, as we have not found it written explicitly anywhere in the entire Torah what should be done with a blemished bechor. Recall that a blemished bechor can't be brought up as an offering, but it is not disqualified from being eaten, so you can give it as a gift to the priest. And the Gemara asks, and from where does Rabbi Akiva derive that a blemished bechor is also given as a gift to the priest? He derives it from the term their flesh, which is written in the plural. And this teaches that both an unblemished firstborn offering and a blemished firstborn offering are given as gifts to the priest. So, of course, the Gemara now goes back and says, well, what does Rabbi Yishmael understand with this plural term? And the Gemara answers that he understands it to be saying that the priest receives gifts from the flesh of all these firstborn offerings mentioned in the verse, i.e. the bechor, the firstborn of cattle, sheep, and goats. So the Gemara asks, since Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yishmael both agree that a matter derived via a juxtaposition cannot then teach its law via a juxtaposition, with regard to what principle do they disagree? And the Gemara answers, one sage, Rabbi Yishmael, holds that a law derived both from that juxtaposition and from another principle is considered a juxtaposition. So in this case, the specific detail that the breast and thigh of a thanks offering are given to a priest is derived from a juxtaposition with peace offerings. And the length of time in which it may be eaten, 1 day and 1 night, is written explicitly, since it nevertheless is considered a juxtaposition and cannot be used to teach the law with regard to a firstborn offering. And the other sage, Rabbi Akiva, holds that such a case is not considered to be a juxtaposition, and therefore it can be used to teach another law via a juxtaposition. So the Gemara comments, okay, granted, according to the one who says that a matter derived via a juxtaposition and another principle is not considered a juxtaposition, since you have this additional proof, then this is the reason that it is written with regard to the rites performed by the high priest on Yom Kippur, and so shall he do for the tent of meeting that dwells with them in the midst of their impurity in Leviticus 16:16. So Rav Steinsaltz explains, the high priest sprinkles the blood of two offerings, the bull and the goat. He sprinkles their blood between the staves of the ark and on the curtain separating the sanctuary and the Holy of Holies. In each location, he sprinkles their blood once above and 7 times below. The verse does not write all the details of these sprinklings with regard to each offering, and the details of each are derived from what is written explicitly in the other, as follows. Just as the high priest sprinkles in the innermost sanctum between the staves of the ark, once above and 7 times below with the blood of the bull, so he sprinkles on the curtain in the sanctuary. And just as in the innermost sanctum he sprinkles once above and 7 times below with the blood of the goat, So he sprinkles on the curtain in the sanctuary. This is an instance of a law derived both from a juxtaposition and from another principle. And the stringency that a matter derived via a juxtaposition cannot also teach its law via a juxtaposition is not applied in this case, since we're not relying only on the juxtaposition the first time we extend it. But according to the one who says that this too is considered a juxtaposition, then what can be said? How can these laws be derived? And the Gemara answers, it is the locations where the blood is sprinkled that are derived from one another. In the second juxtaposition, the first juxtaposition teaches one law, namely that the blood of the bull and the blood of the goat are to be compared to one another. The second juxtaposition does not teach a law with regard to the blood of the bull and the blood of the goat per se. Rather, it teaches a comparison between the sprinkling performed in the Holy of Holies and the sprinkling performed in the sanctuary. These are two unconnected juxtapositions, not one extending its law to the second by juxtaposition and the second extending its law to the third by juxtaposition. Rather, two juxtapositions are happening, but they're not teaching the same law. Now we're on 57b. The Gemara suggests, and if you wish, say, there is a different resolution. The sprinkling outside is derived from the sprinkling inside all at once. There are not two comparisons here, one derived from the other, but rather a single complex juxtaposition from which all of the relevant laws are derived. Now the Gemara comments on this thinking. Granted, according to the one who says that a matter derived via a juxtaposition and another principle is not a juxtaposition, this is the reason that it is written with regard to the offering brought on Shavuos, you shall bring out of your dwellings 2 wave loaves that are waved, of 2/10 of an ephah. They shall be of fine flour. Leviticus 23:17. Since apparently there is no need for the verse to state, you shall bring, as it already states, and you shall present a new meal offering to the Lord, why must the verse state, you shall bring? It states this to teach that anything that you bring from another place that is similar to this offering, i.e. the leavened bread that accompanies a thanks offering, shall be prepared like this. So just as there, with regard to the 2 loaves, they must be prepared from 1/10 of an ephah of flour for each loaf, so too here, each of the 10 loaves of leavened bread that accompany a thanks offering must be prepared from 1/10 of an ephah of flour for each loaf. If they are compared, why not say that just as there with regard to the 2 loaves, the total amount of flour is 2/10 of an ephah, so too here with regard to the 10 loaves that accompany a thanks offering, the total amount of flour of all 10 should be 2/10 of an ephah. You might have thought that, and to counter this comparison, the verse states, they shall be, to serve as a restriction and teach that only these 2 loaves amount to a total of 2/10 of an ephah, but the bread accompanying the thanks offering does not amount to 2/10 of an ephah. And the Gemara continues, the 10 loaves accompanying a thanks offering must each be 1/10 of an ephah, and this has been derived from 2 sources, a juxtaposition with the offering of Shavuos and another principle, which is that which the verse states concerning the thanks offering, that there must be 10 leavened loaves with it. And we have learned that 10/10 of an ephah is required for the 10 loaves of leavened bread. From where does it derive that the 10/10 of an ephah are required for the matzah, which also accompanies a thanks offering? After stating that the 30 matzahs accompany a thanks offering, the verse states, with cakes of leavened bread in Leviticus 7:13. To juxtapose the matzah with the leavened bread. And this teaches that one must bring matzah of an amount corresponding to the leavened bread. In any event, this derivation can be employed according to the one who says that a matter derived via a juxtaposition and another principle does not count as a juxtaposition. But according to the one who says that a matter derived as a juxtaposition and another principle does count as a juxtaposition, and therefore cannot teach its law via another juxtaposition, what is there to say? How can the measure of flour for the matzah be derived from the measure of flour for the leavened bread? And the Gemara answers, the first law connecting the 2 loaves of Shavuos to the bread accompanying a thanks offering is not derived via a juxtaposition, but rather via a superfluous word. The term "you shall bring" with regard to the 2 loaves is extra, and is therefore considered as if it were written explicitly with regard to the leavened bread accompanying the thanks offering. Therefore, it is possible to derive the law concerning matzah from the law concerning leavened bread via a juxtaposition, since you didn't use up your allotment of juxtaposition. I'm almost done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. The Mishnah teaches the Pesach is eaten only at night, and it is eaten only it is eaten only at night, and it is eaten only until midnight. And the Gemara asked, who is the Tana who taught this Mishnah? Rav Yosef said that it is Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, as it is taught in a Baraisa. The verse states, and they shall eat of the flesh on that night, Exodus 12:8. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, it is stated here on that night, without stating when the night ends. And it is stated there with regard to the plague that afflicted the firstborn Egyptians. And I will pass through the land of Egypt on that night, and I will strike every firstborn in the land of Egypt. That's Exodus 12:12. Now, with regard to the death of the firstborns, the Torah states in chapter 11, so said the Lord, at about midnight, I will go out into the midst of Egypt, and every firstborn in Egypt shall die. Exodus 11, verses 4 and 5. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah continues, so just as in the verse there, the death of the firstborns occurred until midnight, as stated explicitly in the other verse, so too in the verse here, the mitzvah to eat the Pesach continues until midnight and not beyond. Rabbi Akiva said to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, but isn't it already stated, and so shall you eat it, with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, your staffs in your hand, and you will eat it in haste, for it is the Pesach, the Paschal offering, for the Lord, in Exodus 12:11. Now this verse indicates that the Pesach may be eaten until the time of haste, i.e. until dawn, as the Jewish people left Egypt hastily the next morning. So Rabbi Akiva is suggesting that they have all night, in subsequent years, when we're celebrating Pesach, that you should be able to eat it all night. We eat it at night, but you can eat it all night. Why only until midnight? Like Elazar ben Azariah says. So the Gemara asks, if so, why must the verse state on that night? With regard to the Pesach, the Gemara explains this phrase is necessary, as one might have thought that the Pesach is like all the other offerings in that it should be eaten during the day. On the day it is sacrificed. You might have thought that because it's an offering. To counter this reasoning, the verse states, on that night, to emphasize that this particular offering shall be eaten at night, but it shall not be eaten during the day. Abaye said to Rav Yosef, and from where do you know that the Mishnah represents the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah and is stating that the Pesach must be eaten by midnight by Torah law? Perhaps the Mishnah is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, and it is stated that the Pesach must be eaten by midnight by rabbinic law. And the reason for the rabbinic decree was to distance one from sin, right? If you allow people to eat it until dawn, they're up all night, they're celebrating Pesach, they might catch a nap, they might doze off, and then, wake up and it's like, kind of misty morning. They're like, oh, I should have finished eating that. It's already too late, but they take another bite. That's a sin. So to distance themselves from that possibility, not by Torah law, which would allow until dawn, but by rabbinic decree, which is a fence around the Torah to distance people from sin, that's why it has to be finished by midnight. That's the suggestion. Rav Yosef replied, if so, what does the Mishnah mean when it says it is eaten only until midnight? With regard to the other offerings, the Mishnah teaches until midnight without specifying only. Rather, one must say that it is like there, with regard to the other laws of the Pesach stated in the Mishnah. Just as there, the requirements are by Torah law, so too here, with regard to the final time for eating the meat, the requirement is also by Torah law, and this implies that it is by Torah law that it has to be eaten by midnight. What difference does it make whether it's by Torah law or by rabbinic decree that it has to be eaten by midnight? Because if it's by Torah law, in cases of uncertainty, we rule stringently. And if it's by rabbinic law, in cases of uncertainty, we rule leniently. And that concludes our discussion of chapter 5. When we pick it up again with page 58 tomorrow. Shabbos is coming in at 4:30, so it's going to end approximately 5:30. I'm hoping that I can get on the air by like 6:15, between 6:15 and 6:30 here in Pacific time. Tomorrow, teach the class, grab my backpack, and head to the airport. I won't have to pack much because it's a 24-hour whirlwind going to the Kinnis HaShlachim. Okay, no comments. All right, easy enough. Good Shabbos, my holy sisters and brothers, and with God's help, see you tomorrow evening. All the best.